Good afternoon, all. Happy Friday. I trust everyone is safe and well. Welcome to today's Open Classroom webinar. Today, we welcome back Cameron, doing a double shift this week with a special request turn module webinar. Please remember that all our past webinars can be found on our website on the FAQ page, which is under the Services pull-down menu. As always, please feel free to use the text chat service on the GoToWebinar app to ask us any questions you may have during Cameron's presentation. So, good afternoon, Cameron, and take it away.
Good afternoon, Charles. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to today's Open Classroom, where we'll be focusing in on the Turn module. The Turn module is a dynamic and interactive simulation of low-speed turning maneuvers of cars, trucks, articulated vehicles, trailers, commercial aircraft along a specified tracking path. Today, I'm going to take you through the Turn module, looking at all the functionality, and eventually we'll get to a stage where we are able to go and view our simulation in a 3D format like this, looking at the swept path of the wings as we pass the terminal and then move on to the cul-de-sac. Before we do this, we need to learn the basics of the Turn module, so we will return to this project at a later stage. I'm going to delete that simulation so that we can go through it together a bit later. The Turn module can be found if you go to Applications, and if you haven't selected it yet, it would be in this drop-down list. I've already gone and selected it over here, and then I've gone to View on top, I've gone to Toolbars at the bottom, I've scrolled down, and I've selected the Turn option. Looking at the toolbars on the top. First of all, before you run the simulation, you need to go and specify the setup. Civil Designer comes with preloaded vehicle library options, just to point some of them out for you. We've got the aircrafts, which we'd deal with a bit later. We've got the TRH-17 UK vehicles, as well as the customized. I've got some additional vehicles there that we've made for our clients. If you do go and select the customized vehicle options, as an example, we've got a dumper truck. And if you want to see the dimensions of that, there it is, indicated with the diagram over here. Because it's a customized vehicle, you are able to go and change the dimensions. If you do want to add your own customized vehicle, you have the option to add. Specify the vehicle name and what type of vehicle it would be. It may be a good idea to get the vehicle dimensions from the manufacturer. As an example, I'm going to cancel this. There's a couple of examples of the different interlinks that you may want to use when you customize your own vehicles. Civil Designer also gives you, as mentioned before, different aircrafts, including the de Havilland Dash 8 and the Hawker Siddeley. Back in Civil Designer, let's go to a project where we'll run a simulation. Going back to the setup, and this time I'm going to go and select the TRH-17 vehicles. Looking at the interlink, and then clicking on Edit to show you the dimensions. You can see because this is a TRH-17 vehicle, the values are grayed out. Looking at the tractor, which would represent the actual truck. Then we're looking at trailer number 1, which would be this section over here, and then looking at trailer number 2, which would be the back trailer. You'll see on the right-hand side, it's also divided into those 3 sections. Take note of the maximum steering angle of 24.4. That is the maximum angle of the truck. If you do go and specify and force steering angle limits, if that angle is exceeded, the simulation will be stopped and Civil Designer would present you with a warning. Turning that on. You could go and specify the starting angle, looking at your simulation settings, coordination interval. The smaller your coordination interval, the more accurate the simulation would be, but the longer it takes for the simulation. Be careful not to use too much of a small interval when simulating an articulated vehicle due to the distance between the rear axles and the kingpin. I'm going to use 0.5 meter. Simulation type, you have the option of none. In that case, let's call it a dry run where your steering angle limits will be checked. Looking at the track path, if I go and select the track path, these settings over here will be implemented during the simulation. Track path indicates the position of the wheels of the vehicle and a trailer along its path, which is an awesome indication for positioning of curbs and islands. Alternatively, you have the option of a swept path. The swept path illustrates the amount of space the vehicle and trailers take up during the movement. Let's call it the extremities of the vehicle. So in that case, it would use these settings over here. I'm going to first of all do a track path, and I'm going to specify a forward direction. If you select draw vehicle at control points, it will use the settings on the top right hand side. That really shows you the vehicle at the beginning, at the end of the simulation, as well as your start and end of curves. Show results after your simulation. That would give you a table as well as a graph indicating the change and the steering angles. I'm going to turn that off for now and then focus in on the cargo point tracking. If I go and select Designer, there's your cargo point indicated by the red circle. As you move your cursor, you can see your horizontal and vertical coordinates update. If I were to go and click somewhere, you'll see that these coordinates are dynamically updated. Alternatively, I could go and put in my own coordinates, and the red point would then dynamically update. You can specify the cargo location point on the tractor, on trailer 1 or trailer 2. And as you go and select the different options, you can see the cyan color update. You can use the old school Civil Designer keyboard shortcuts by pressing M for magnify, D for demagnify, and then also pressing the J for jump. And lastly, you can also go and specify at which speed you'd like the simulation to run at. To save us time, I'll make it 60 kilometers per hour. Take note, we've got the track path, and I've enforced the steering angle limits. Before I run the simulation, I need to go and specify along which route we want to run the vehicle. And that would be then the center line. I go to the second icon here. I have the option of manually defining the path or automatically. Now I've gone and drawn in a polyline, so I'm going to go and select the manual path, click on it, right click, and select finish. Once the path is selected, I can go and run the simulation. As pointed out earlier, my maximum steering angle was 24.4 degrees. At this bend, that angle is exceeded, so it stops the simulation. Let's view the results in more detail. Zooming into the simulation and going back to the setup page. Looking at the specific pen colors. Looking at color 4, that indicates the truck position of the wheels. Trailer 1, color number 7, and then looking at color 11. And then just pointing out the cargo line that we've specified. While I'm here, I'm going to go and change the vehicle to an articulated bus. I'm going to change the simulation type to a swept path. I'm going to switch off enforce steering angle limits and then switch on show results after the simulation. And then lastly, just turn off our cargo point. Click on OK. Delete the previous run. And then change my viewport. Run the simulation again. This time we asked for simulation results. If you look over here at the beginning of our simulation, we had a straight, and that's why the angles begin with 0. As we approach the circle, you can see the degrees increase. All of them being positive because we're turning to the right, and then closer to the end of our road, as we turn to the left, you'll see you've got negative degrees. On the right-hand side, we've got the simulation graph. And that indicates the actual turning angle, the chainage, as well as the maximum steering angles. At the bottom, we've got a summary indicating the type, the direction, and the radius. You have an option to export this as a CSV file. Looking at the actual results over here, the swept path, you can see we've got a problem where our vehicle would collide with the different objects. Same thing applies on this side. There we'll have a problem as well as over here. Let's look at a reverse direction. I'm going to delete that run again, go back to my setup and change the simulation direction to reverse. Turning off show results dialog. Click on OK. This time I'm going to manually indicate the path so that you can see how it's done. I'll select the straight, the curve, and then the straight again. Right click and finish. Press in the simulation button and then viewing the results. As can be seen here, we've got no problems with the vehicle reversing into the parking spot. I'm going to turn off those CAD center lines. And I'm going to look at the dynamic simulation option. With the dynamic simulation, you go and specify a start and an end point, specify whether you want the vehicle to travel around the object or not, and Civil Designer will simulate that path. Let's take a closer look at this, selecting dynamic simulation. Just getting a message that we got to do this in a forward run. So click on OK. Going back to the setup, I think let's take this opportunity to go and select a customized vehicle. Looking at the dimensions, and then specifying the simulation direction as forward. Switching off the cargo point. Trying the function again. Specifying the start point. Now I've strategically gone and put in a couple of points, so I'm going to go and use my grab all snap mode. Clicking on the start point, specifying which direction for initial movement. So it may be that you wanted to go and put in your vehicle at a certain angle at the start of the simulation. I'm going towards the waypoint. I'm then going to left click there and then go and specify where the actual waypoint is. Reading my prompt, it says, do you want the vehicle to move around an obstacle? In this case, I'm going to say no. So it runs the forward simulation. Next up, I'm going to go and indicate another waypoint. But this time, I'm going to ask Civil Designer to run the vehicle around an object. First indicating the waypoint. specifying yes, I do want the vehicle to run around an obstacle, indicate the position of the obstacle, and then specifying I want the vehicle to pass on the right of the obstacle by 300 mils clearance. Doing all the number crunching and then viewing the results. I'm just going to right click and quit. So here I'm using the extremities. I'm just passing my obstacles. There we've got sufficient clearance. Put in full faith in the driver's capabilities and then ending off at that waypoint. From a different perspective, we also give you the option of specifying a minimum envelope. In that case, you would go and select this icon, create the minimum envelope. But before I do that, I'm going to go and change my vehicle again. So going back to the setup, going back to the TRH17. Let's go and select a semi-trailer. Going back to minimum envelope, specifying which setup to use. You have the option of an absolute minimum envelope, TRH template, or using the TRH formulas to travel around a curb. I'm going to go and select the absolute minimum envelope, go and specify the coordination interval, the swept path, turning direction to the right, going in a forward direction, and turning 180 degrees. Specifying my start point and the direction for the initial movement. And then left kick. In this example, it would be ideal if you haven't done the development yet and you want to see what the minimum turning circle is. You can always go and select this and go and move it and go and rotate it if you need to use it in your design. Not sure if you've been wondering what this current vehicle is over here. It's one of the newer CAD functions that I thought would be appropriate in a case like this. If you go and select this icon over here, Civil Designer will go and put in a profile of the vehicle for you. What I've done beforehand is I've gone and created blocks of these vehicles and I've given it a visibility state. Just to show you an example, I'm going to go and delete this. I'm going to go to Insert on top, select Block, specify which block I'm looking at. I've got all the TRH17 vehicles as part of this block. That's why I've got a whole array of vehicles there. Before you panic, go and right-click, select Visible State, and there you can go and specify which vehicle you would like visible. So there's the interlink. If I right-click again, I could go and change it to the articulated bus. Or let's say the semi-trailer. If I've gone and placed my block in position, and at a later stage I need to go and change it, I can always go back to the properties. Under miscellaneous, go and change the visibility state to another vehicle. Now that we've done everything in 2D, let's move on to the next project. We still don't run the simulation, but this time we only run it with an aircraft, and then we'll go and view it in 3D. The cyan color represents the path that the aircraft will take, and I'm going to start it at this point over here. Going back to my setup, specifying aircraft as my vehicle library. Looking at the many different options available to me, worthwhile pointing out the Dakota. This aircraft uses a tail steer. In my case, I'm going to go and select the Beechcraft King Air, which is a nose steer. specifying the swept path option and clicking on OK. Specifying the simulation path. Again, what I've done is I've put in a polyline. So I select the polyline, go and right click and select finish. Once the path is defined, I'm going to run the simulation. Looking at the aircraft from the plan view, and then using my defined viewports. Coming into the terminal area, dropping off the passengers, and then moving on to the cul-de-sac. There you can see the extent of the simulation. Let's view it in a 3D format. I'm going to go and turn off 2D lines. And then using a 3D polyline, I've simulated the path that the aircraft would take. Let's go and view that in 3D. Go and right click, select render view. I need to point out that you just need the turn and the CAD module for this, but if you do have the roads module, it's easier to achieve this. Looking at the yellow line, we don't follow that path. I've given us a bit of a bumpy landing, so if you look at the yellow line, you can see we've got a bump once we have touchdown, and then moving on to the terminal, dropping the passengers off, and then moving on to our cul-de-sac. Taking full advantage of our 3D view, looking at it from different perspectives. And then right-clicking on the polyline and selecting Fly Along. Having a bit of a bumpy landing and then slowing down the simulation. Approaching the terminal area. Now, remember, if you want to stop, you can press V and look at the terminal. And then lock in your view again to the front view. Back onto the landing strip. You can see the swept path on the left and the right hand side. It's about all the time I have for today. Thank you for joining us. Have a fantastic weekend. Until next time, cheers for now.
Awesome, Cameron. That was great. And thank you to all who attended today. Please remember, if you would like any further information with regards to Civil Designer's Turn module, please use the email listed on your screens right now, or visit our website. See you all next week, Tuesday, at the same time and same place, using the same link, where Andrew will be facilitating a survey and terrain class. Have a great afternoon, fantastic weekend, and goodbye for now.